Hello, I'm Mabel Chan, and this is One in a Billion. This summer, we kick off a special series, LifeChangers, Time to Tell. In this series, we focus on Asian philanthropists who have built a lifetime of success on the backbone of adversity.
I'm Buck G. I worked in Silicon Valley for about 35 years as an engineer, then an entrepreneur, then an executive as a general manager and vice president at Cisco Systems.
Buck is a second-generation Chinese American who reached the top of his game in the early 2000s. He says luck has a lot to do with his success after success, except when he failed.
I did 6 startups. 3 of them failed. I did not feel good. Fortunately, I had 3 not failed.
Those 3 that did not fail, one went public in an IPO, and the other 2 were acquired by Cisco. Then Buck worked for Cisco until he retired in 2008, when he turned to philanthropy, giving his money, time, and talent to helping other people get lucky.
The biggest thing for me when I retired was to work on increasing Asian leadership in industry and in the public sector.
In today's episode, Buck talks about his climb to the top and what he saw and experienced at that level gave him a vision that would turn into his philanthropic passion. Here's our conversation. Buck, when I Googled you, I got 6,430,000 results.
No.
Yes.
No. I'll have to try that. Try that.
You should totally try it. 6,430,000 results. What they share in common is your role as a writer, speaker, teacher about Asian American leadership, the bamboo ceiling, the failure of Asians to make it to top management positions. So,
right.
My question is, when and how did you first notice this phenomenon?
I had not even thought about it until 2006. I had been acquired by Cisco. I was the CEO of a startup in Silicon Valley and was acquired by Cisco in 2004 and became vice president, general manager of the division inside Cisco. And I was working at my desk one Sunday morning, and I thought to myself, I think I'm the only Chinese American vice president here in development. So I emailed my boss, Charlie Giancarlo at the time, and said, Charlie, am I the only one? And Charlie emailed me back and said, yeah, Buck, you are the only one.
Buck's boss did not stop there. He too wondered why that was and asked Buck to look into it.
When I found out that I was one out of 104 vice president in engineering who was East Asian, I decided I got to do something. I got to fix this because I'm the only one. There's no one else to hand the ball off to.
Well, Buck, I would argue that this may not be a problem, right? Because if I were you, I got to be honest, maybe I'm just selfish. I would say, great, I'm the only one. There's no competition. But why do you see it as a problem? This is a phenomenon, but why is it a problem? There are only so many who can make it to the top, as they say. There is limited space on the pedestal, right? So the problem may be a scarcity of top jobs.
So that's certainly one way to look at it. The other way to look at it is the data in Silicon Valley, not just Cisco. Roughly 45% of the professionals are Asian. You look at executives, it's roughly 23%. You look at whites, about 42% of the workforce is white, and roughly 65% of executives are white. Now, one way to interpret that is to say executive talent is disproportionately distributed to whites, and Asians are not capable of being leaders. You can either believe that or something else going on. I fail to believe that Asian Americans are less capable of being leaders than whites. Do you?
No, I don't. When I used to work at ABC News years ago, when I arrived at a somewhat junior management position, I was happy that I'm the only one. I mean, so many people, all kinds of colors, gunning for promotion. That's why I'm very curious, what does that say about you? You want to share that pedestal, Buck.
I look at it a different way, Mabel. You're supposed to be a leader. You're supposed to look at the company and look at what's going on and how to make it better. Being a general manager And being one of the top there at Cisco, you need to do something. That's your responsibility. When you're younger, junior, you're happy to move on.
Right. And clearly, I was not at the top like you were. I was just a little bit closer to the top.
Right. And I was the only one who cared. And that's the way that a lot of companies run, is that you need a champion to make something happen.
You co-wrote a paper published in 2014, The Failure of Asian Success. What a provocative title. I love it. The key takeaway for me is that Asians are growing in the professional workforce and in the overall population in California Bay Area. That was your focus at the time. But they are not making it to the top. They're not promoted. They're not executives. And you said the key reason is Asians lack leadership skills. Can you elaborate on that? Can you identify leadership skills or attributes that Asians lack?
Sure. I'll tell you an anecdote. So I was the VP at Cisco. There were about 30 Asian American directors in development. And I called them in a meeting to talk about the issue. And as I heard their comments about what's going on, one of the things was, in order to get the top, you need to be visible. You need to take risks. You need to show that you can do something that has a challenge. And many of them said, I have a nice, comfortable job as a director. I don't know whether I want to risk losing my job to get to the next level. And as they were talking about this, I was thinking, I wouldn't promote them either. No wonder they haven't been promoted. They're not demonstrating what people are looking for to go to the next level.
To go to the next level, U.S. leadership prototypes also favor assertiveness, dynamism, and enthusiasm, according to a research study by Professor Thomas Tsai at University of California, Riverside. But that same study shows Asian Americans are perceived to lack those Western leadership traits because of the prevailing Asian cultural norm. Asian culture favors conformity, harmony, and humility, as well as deference to authority and intolerance for ambiguity.
Thomas's research says one of the barriers that many Asian Americans have is this fear of loss of face, which is a sort of an Asian cultural thing. And when you fail, you lose face. If you're on a team, if you fail, he gets shot, he gets cut, he gets fired. I don't want to take a risk as a general manager. What you do has less to do with what you know and how smart you are and how hard you work, with much more on how you influence people.
In the age of DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusivity, corporate America has vowed to increase more women and minorities in the workforce. But companies are mostly driven to meet the federal compliance metrics of representation, which only looks at a minority's percentage of the U.S. population. Senior management does not see an Asian problem.
The issue is not representation. The question for me is equitable promotions. Even though the levels are there, they're inequitably promoted to the top. They don't recognize the fact that our promotion rates are half those of non-Asian population, the white population. If you're being promoted at half the rate, then they ask the question, okay, what's going on?
Generally, Asians are reluctant to socialize after work. Do you think that core competencies aren't enough? It's really affinity, the likability factors that can be cultivated when you're having a beer at dive bar with your peers, with your boss, going to the golf club, or smoking during breaks, or being able to talk. All of those activities sort of form what's called the old boys club, right, so to speak. And of course, they exist to rule out not only women, but some men too. So you got to get in there. But Asian in general, we don't always get into that. We don't feel as if affinity is what they would require for us to be part of that club to be considered for promotion to the top. Am I right?
Affinity is very important. The reason it's really important is this. In general, people promote people they trust. Research says that before people can trust another person, they have to have 3 general points of similarity. How are you alike? What do you share in common? So if your manager knows nothing about you, there's like 0. Okay. If you're a man and he's a man, you have one thing. having kids. Can you share stories about having kids? So you can show you have that in common. Do you like some sport that you can talk about? If you can figure out 3 points of identity or affinity or similarity, that's enough.
It seems to me you're hitting really the cultural differences in how we as Asians generally view what it takes to be a leader. And that is, you succeed in your core competency. You focus, concentrate on demonstrating your ability.
Yep.
And yet you're describing something softer and very concrete. And that is, you need to be viewed by your peers as trustworthy because they know you through socializing, not just they know your work to be exemplary. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right, Mabel. We've been talking a lot about the gap between Asian characteristics, general characteristics of leadership. I want to make one thing real clear. A large part of this is implicit bias that we cannot be because we don't get the opportunity to even be considered for that. So my point being, what's been done in the last 10, 20 years has been focused on changing and helping change the Asian American community. That's half the problem. The other part of the problem is changing the non-Asian community and getting them aware and the things that structurally we have to change in terms of the system. I want to be sure that's real clear.
Another thing that Buck has also made quite clear to me is how he himself has learned, changed, and evolved as a leader.
So after I got an MBA at Harvard, I became a product manager. I had one technical marketing engineer work for me, and he was a terrible writer. And I would take his papers and I would just use a red line and just cross out stuff. So after about 6 months of doing that, at the monthly 101, I'd say, "So how you doing?" And he said, "Buck, I got to tell you, the last thing I sent you, I got back, it was actually the first thing he'd ever written good." And I said, "Great job." And with very few red lines. And he said, "Buck, when I got that back from you, I was on cloud 9. My feet did not touch the ground for a week."
Whoa.
And as he said that, I suddenly realized my job is to really focus on my people. I didn't realize the impact I had on my people, what I said and what I did. It wasn't just me. I had to figure out how to get them better, not how to show how smart I am. That really changed the way I look at people. And I realized I can't just be a critic anymore. That I'm his manager. I need to develop. That's my role now.
Buck, I'm really wondering, what are some of the stumbles you've made? How did you react to your stumbles emotionally, intellectually? Our listeners have always told us they're interested in the process of how leaders work through those moments, right? When they get fired, when they don't get promoted, when they have doubt, how did you think things through? What are some of those stumbles that you can share with us, Buck?
Oh, sure. Yeah, you're going to fail. I did 6 startups. 3 of them failed. Fortunately, I had 3 not failed. My first startup, it didn't make it, and it was terrible. I did not feel good.
That was his first startup after Harvard Business School. Buck tried to make it work for 4 years, but it eventually went down. Without dwelling on his feelings, he soon landed a position as director of marketing at 3Com, an early networking company in the 1980s. His job was to grow sales by 20 to 30% in the software division of 3Com.
2 years later, sales has still not grown. I was moved out of my position into a director of operations. Sales had not increased. So what do you do?
Here's what Buck did. He thought through what happened.
I knew we couldn't do it. I wasn't convinced that it would succeed because my competitor had a better product and everybody knew it. I just went with the flow. Let's try it. And I tried my best, but did I believe? But I honestly, in my heart of hearts, believed we could get there. I didn't believe it, And my lesson from that was, my job at that point is to tell people what I think, whether they like it or not.
So they did you a favor. They moved you out of very high, visible, potentially powerful sales position, which is the growth engine of a company, to something that would give you a say in whether the goals or the targets are realistic.
It gave me a safer job, And then I went to my next startup, and that lesson served me everywhere I go because that's my role, my responsibility to the organization. Because they hire me, they think I'm smart enough to tell them what to do.
Remember, Buck wasn't fired, but he was moved into what he described as a safer job in operations. And I gotta wonder whether the company kept him because of his Harvard and Stanford credentials. But many people don't have those credentials. What can you do to enhance your chances of getting a break?
You have to grow your personal skills. I'm not naturally an extrovert. I'm naturally an introvert. And it's hard. I would go to these social things and force myself to talk, force myself to meet people. The more you do it, the less uncomfortable it becomes. So that's my advice is the things you don't do because it's uncomfortable you're doing, you got to do that because that's part of the job.
In 2008, Buck retired from Cisco. Having made a lot of money from 3 wildly successful startups, he decided to dedicate everything he's learned from his success, failures, and mistakes to training and developing more Asian leaders. He co-founded the Advanced Leadership Program for Asian American executives at Stanford Business School. Buck also turned to philanthropy. I know you don't call yourself a philanthropist, but I first discovered you, the Financial Times article, and you were one of 5 Chinese philanthropists. What motivated you to give away your hard-earned money?
I felt lucky. I worked really hard and took advantage of opportunities. But there are a lot of people like me who work as hard. I do a lot of things in Chinatown, for example, in San Francisco. One of the things is where we provide social services to children of immigrant parents who are working full time. Okay. I'm thinking, that's like me. How many of them are going to have the same chance I have?
Buck is 73 years old now. He grew up in Oroville, a small town in Northern California with 8 brothers and sisters.
When I graduated from high school, we were the only Chinese family in town. I understood the stereotype. Being the only Chinese family in town, you know you're different, which is actually why I worked so hard. I wanted to show I was not the stereotype. I'm not who you think I am. Not just the math guy who can't write anything. I got A's in everything.
His parents were immigrants from China and ran a Chinese restaurant.
My father came in 1937 and my mother in 1947. They didn't put a lot of pressure on us. They wanted us to work hard at school. My father, worked hard at the restaurant 7 days a week. It was 6 days running the restaurant and then a day off to clean up.
Wow.
We never ate as a family together, except for one day when my father had the day off. And, we would go to school. He'd be gone. Show up at like 11 o'clock at night.
You probably observe how they just bear with so much and they toil and they respond with good cheer, right? They were not bitter.
They were very happy. My feeling growing up as a kid was always, I owe my parents. Even when you're a kid, you know that it's one mother and 9 kids. It's hard.
Wow. You recognize that very early on. Kudos to you, because not every child would recognize them for the hard work they do or sacrifice.
They did all this stuff for me to get a great life. I knew that was my responsibility to show them that it was worth it. My father was the paper son. He came in at a time when Chinese immigration was illegal, and he came in as an illegal immigrant and not recognizing that my mother also came in. Essentially, she was illegal too. So I empathize with DACA families now that they come not to break law. They come here because it's the best thing. They think about their kids and where can they raise kids.
They want to build a better life.
Exactly.
What kind of impact do you wish to make through your giving of your money and your time?
With regard to impact, I'm not one of the fans of, I think they call it impact investing or something, where they're looking for specific metrics.
So it's just one person whose life is better because of food, housing, scholarship, whatever it is that you're sponsoring, that would have been enough for you.
Yeah. Besides Chinatown, we give scholarship to people in Oroville, where I grew up, to high school students there every year. And one of the early ones was this girl, Hmong in Southeast Asia.
Right.
We gave it to her because she wanted to go to nursing school as quickly as possible and get a job so she could support her family, because she was the oldest of 9 children. Her parents were disabled. She finished nursing school and went back and living in Oroville and helping out her parents. So, we helped her get there.
It seems to me that what matters most to you as a donor is not, as you mentioned, these KPI, these key performance indicators nonprofits do. What matters most to you is that you directly, if possible, immediately offer money to the pain points so they could succeed and their lives are forever changed.
Well, certainly with the scholarships, you want to make it so those people who can't afford to go to college can get there. I'll give you another example of time, like my Stanford program, the Stanford Business School, to teach high potential Asian Americans in upper middle management directors how to be a general manager. It's going to be, 5-10 years before they reach the level you hope you help them reach. We had somebody in the class, and she came back a couple of times and told me, which was the greatest thing. She said, the lessons that I learned here, I teach the people who work for me. And now she's head of Intel India.
All right.
So, and we still are connected. Seeing her be that successful makes me proud.
Would you, from time to time, quantify the difference that you have made in so many different lives, Buck, to say, wow, I've changed 100 lives and they're now doing X, Y, Z? Do you ever think about it in those terms?
No, I'm not looking back. This leadership question is changing the way companies do business, the way that the DEI infrastructure is systematically ignoring Asian Americans. I'm trying to change that. I got a lot of work to do to fix that.
Now, looking back at your core mission work right now that you've been tirelessly doing, any regrets? How would you talk about trade-offs that you've made to follow this calling?
Any regrets? No, I've pretty much done everything I wanted to do. Because of my education, I have the freedom to move, to get the opportunities. Being retired, I have the freedom to be involved in all those things I want to do.
What do you hope will be your legacy?
I want my kids to be happy more than anything else. If I'm on my deathbed, what I care about, I just want to be sure my 3 kids are happy and they have something to do and feel impactful. I just want my kids to have the same kind of feeling I did and have the same opportunities I did to do what they want to do.
Then what beliefs or values do you want to pass on to your kids for them to be happy?
Good question. I haven't thought about that. I was relatively unconstrained doing the things I wanted to do. Okay. And I've tried to make it so my kids are relatively unconstrained in doing things they want to do, so the freedom to pursue their interests. I would hope that they take that principle and apply it to the people and family they have. If they can do that, I'm happy.
Well, wonderful. Thank you, Buck G. Your last line made me think about my own father. He gave me the freedom to come to America to pursue my interests, even though he himself had never been to America. In our next episode on our LifeChangers series,
I was 10 when I asked my mother for a pair of patent leather pumps, which all the girls were wearing to church on Sundays. And she said, you can have anything you want, but you have to earn the money because we don't have any.
That is Mei Lee Nay, now an investment advisor in California. How did she earn her way in life and learn the value of money before becoming a philanthropist? Tune in to our next episode on the last Friday of September. 1 in a Billion LifeChangers special series is made possible by our corporate sponsor, Claudia Lin, founder and CEO of Legacy Maker LLC, an investment advisory company with a holistic approach to investing and managing your assets. 1 in a Billion is produced by our sound engineer and designer, Brian Latinowicz, and our lovely theme song is composed by Brad McCarthy. Let us know if you want to join our team of volunteers, help us plan events, or pitch a story. Just go to our website, 1inabillionvoices.org, and find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.